Hello and welcome to the Eating Disorder Therapist podcast. I'm Harriet Frew, eating disorder therapist, here to support you in overcoming disordered eating and finding peace with food. So thank you so much for listening today. So today I want to talk more about the skinny jab and eating disorders, because I'm finding that this is a topic that's coming more and more into the eating disorder therapy room. Okay, so let's dive in. So it's now a reality now that so many people across the UK and beyond are taking these GLP-1 medications, the skinny jab, and many of these people that are using these medications do not have the best food relationship. And quite a lot of people have eating disorders or disordered eating. And I have found in the therapy room in the last few weeks, more than one of my underweight clients has actually expressed their desire towards wanting to experiment with the jabs, even to the point of loading up the online shopping basket before emptying it again. So it's just so easy to get hold of these drugs. Now, clients that have done this, they know that the jab is not the healthy option. You know, if you have an eating disorder, it's a very slippery slope to go down this road, can potentially be quite dangerous as well. And often people are already struggling with restriction, purging, binge eating, maybe chewing and spitting, over exercising, all the things. But the jab can feel so compelling, and it's so normalized now because increasing numbers of people are sharing their skinny stories, and also there's a lot of people that are just sort of shrinking silently to proportions that are unlikely to have been facilitated by dietary overhaul alone. I mean, I think we're seeing, aren't we, so many people in the public space who have noticeably shrinked in size. Now, as an eating disorder therapist, it is very tempting to protest right off the skinny jab as this completely evil demon, and to staunchly favour a psychological approach as the purest path to healing. Now, of course, I favour the deeper healing work, avoiding quick fixes, but I recognise that these meds are here to stay, and they bring another factor to the already complex formulation of understanding eating disorders, because of people are drawn to them. People are going to want to use them even if they have eating disorders and disordered eating. So we need to just be really acknowledge that and to be able to work with that and support people. So I'm going to share 5 anecdotal musings about this whole thing from inside the therapy room. So number 1, if you have an eating disorder, your mind will propel you towards any weight loss hack, regardless of risk. And that's a sad thing, because an eating disorder is a psychological coping strategy. There are elements around an eating disorder which can feel very, very addictive. And if you have an eating disorder, your self-worth is intrinsically tied to your weight and shape. So for you just to feel okay, probably not even good, but to feel okay, you probably feel that the weighing scales say a certain number, or the number is going down, or you feel that your body is shrinking. You know, that is almost the condition for you to feel okay. Otherwise, you don't feel good at all. Now, what this does is it drives that compelling addictive need to pursue the weight loss outcome, never mind the costs. So people get drawn into purging, over-exercising, starving endlessly to reach this kind of Everest summit. And now the skinny jab feels like another potential tool to add to the box. And it might feel less destructive in comparison to other behaviours, as it's becoming so normalised in society. But it can be incredibly risky, particularly if you're already underweight. Now, this is not to judge anyone, because the toxic societal values are very clear, aren't they? Skinny equals beauty, self-discipline, popularity and acceptance. And in diet culture, a larger body does not equate with these things. So the toxic backdrop makes everything so challenging. Now, an eating disorder is not about vanity. It is a coping mechanism for deep feelings of unworthiness and not feeling good enough. And weight and food offer safety and focus. And your body changing will probably bolster your worth initially. It offers glimmers of self-esteem as people praise your new body, and perhaps it distracts from inner turmoil and pain. It effectively numbs emotions. And it brings purpose and meaning when other life areas are turbulent and out of control. But it never feels enough. There is always more weight to lose, and the goalposts move continuously. So it just never, ever, ever feels enough. And that's why I guess even like some of my clients who are underweight have even been thinking about pursuing the skinny jab because of, although they're already restricting and in a whole kind of awful place with many other behaviours, it feels like this is one more thing that could potentially get them to this sort of Everest summit, which, we never get there. It's impossible to win. Okay, the second thing we want to talk about is health versus thinness. So why do people take the meds? Now, I think it is often a combination of health-driven and aesthetic reasons. Obviously, it depends very much on the individual. Now, we know, obviously, if you are underweight, normal weight, not healthy to be taking the GLP-1 meds. But for someone who's in a larger body as well, losing weight does not always equate with better health, and the Health at Every Size movement brings valuable perspectives to this area. So in Laura Thomas's book, Just Eat It, she talks a lot about the Health at Every Size movement, and she, talks about many examples of research where they have showed that health can be improved significantly for individuals with health enhancing behaviours. So for example, walking more, drinking water, prioritising sleep, managing alcohol, managing stress, all of these things. Losing weight is not necessarily always a factor that indicates health. It is not a black and white thing. So what does it say about the skinny jab here? So this is not to say that the skinny jab can't be used as an additional tool for a person who perhaps has diabetes, mobility issues, or is really suffering with their health. It could be another tool that could be used. But I think it's really recognizing that weight loss is not always the straightforward answer for better health. And many skinny people are actually not healthy, because weight and health, they don't equate as perfect calibrators. Now, of course, our society very much favours the body mass index, the BMI, as the holy grail of health interpretation. But BMI, as we know, it's factually not that reliable, as the tool was created for groups of white European men and was never meant to be utilised as a measure for individuals. And it also doesn't take body composition into consideration. So if you're taller, bigger boned, have a larger muscle mass, your BMI may be deemed unhealthy, whereas actually you may be perfectly fine for your body. So I guess it's just to say really that before jumping in to wanting to use the skinny jab, perhaps based on health, on a health basis, you may wish to really consider carefully your own genetics and also finding your own personal health balance, because I think it's very, very, very individual. And it's not to say that the skinny jab could not be a tool as part of a wider range of things for some people. But I think, again, it's not really for people who are already underweight or are a normal healthy weight. But again, when I'm saying that underweight, normal healthy weight, I am referencing the BMI, which I guess again has its limitations. So I think what I'm trying to say here is you really need to look at each individual case. But having said all of that, it's understandable that people want to be thinner for aesthetic reasons. I think we can't argue with that, because it's a sad reality that weight stigma and fat phobia are rife in the culture. If you lose weight, you will experience thin privilege and a genuinely elevated level of societal acceptance. And as humans, we want to fit in and be accepted and part of the tribe. So it's completely understandable to desire for acceptance. So whereas in the past it was endless diets and wellness miracle plans to chase a thin aesthetic, now the drugs are understandably an appealing option. So I guess it's just having compassion as well, isn't it? Of course, in a way, people are drawn to want to take the skinny jab because you will genuinely be more accepted in society if you take it. Number 3, the not so sexy impact of taking the skinny jab. So apparently between 20 and 30 people are thought to have lost their lives through taking skinny jabs, and the long-term effects are still not known. So when you take the meds, you're likely to experience rapid weight loss, at least initially, the average patient losing 15% of their body weight in the first year. Now, I think this research as well is taken from people who are referred into NHS services in the UK, where their body mass index starts at, I think, 35 plus. So again, it's looking at a certain kind of cohort. Now, the clients that are using the skinny jab that I see in therapy, and again, I guess I just want to say that it's still a limited number compared to the overall number of people I see in therapy. I don't want to give the false impression that everybody is on it. Far from it. I think a lot of people have had thoughts about wanting to use it, but it's still a minority of people in the therapy room. But clients that are using it, often do experience a honeymoon period of euphoria. It feels like this magic elixir towards change and transformation. But having said this as well, not everyone gets on with the drugs. You can really feel very nauseous, unwell, and then it's not really sustainable to continue. And then people come off the drugs, weight creeps back on, and it can feel extremely distressing and overwhelming to see this. And absolutely, then, this can propel people to experiment with more extreme ways of coping. So you're very highly at risk of trying to use like laxatives, vomiting, overexercise, chewing and spitting. All of these things can take an aggressive grip. Maybe if you didn't even struggle with these things pre the skinny jab, you were so vulnerable. So physically, taking the skinny jab is not that beneficial for overall body composition. Rapid weight loss results in loss of muscle over fat, which is not so wholesome for the body. And when you come off the drugs, there's a significant potential for weight gain when the food noise returns. And weight gain is likely to result in increased fat storage over muscle, so your baseline body composition shifts. And as we know, maintaining muscle is extremely important as we age for all kinds of reasons. Now, research from The Biggest Loser TV show 6 years ago showed that the contestants' metabolic rates had never recovered due to the accelerated weight loss experienced. So what about people who are persisting with the drugs? So for some people, it does seem to bring success. Again, I would not advocate it if you have eating disorder or disordered eating, but we don't really know the longer term impacts yet. So for some as well, in the short term, they will plough onwards with the meds despite feeling ill, because the weight loss is so seductive and rewarding. But it can be quite a miserable day-to-day existence, feeling nauseous and ill, not being able to enjoy food. Again, though, individual experiences vary widely. And some of my clients find themselves eating still despite the lack of food noise once the honeymoon period passes. So I've got a client who was taking Monjaro for 9 months to a year, had a real honeymoon period during that time, but then found she sort of hit Christmas last year, and even though the lack of food noise the lack of food noise remained, she found that she fell back into using food as a coping, and just all the availability of food around Christmas and all the kind of parties and things that were going on, etc. And that was a reality for her, like once she kind of come through the honeymoon period. Also, as well, I found with some clients that when their weight loss plateaus, they can become really, really disillusioned and return to food for comfort. So I think, again, the trouble is when you go on a weight loss journey, you're extremely high risk of becoming very preoccupied with weight and shape, your self-worth becoming so linked to weight and shape. So when your weight loss plateaus, you feel really miserable, you feel as though you're failing, you feel disillusioned, and then if you use food before to cope, you can just turn back to it for that understandable comfort. And it's really easy to become so obsessed with weight and numbers as well. So I guess I would say that my experience so far is the skinny jab is a tool, but it doesn't necessarily fix underlying issues with food beyond the novelty early days. But it will be interesting to see how things develop. Number 4, the food noise component. So food noise describes the persistent, intrusive thoughts about food people have even when they're not hungry. It's that constant mental chatter about what, when, how much to eat, which bubbles through daily life. Now, one of the celebrated benefits of the GLP-1 meds is the decrease in food noise, and this can be an understandable and welcome relief. However, we know that food noise is often a symptom of undereating, mental or physical restriction. So physical restriction includes things like not eating enough, eliminating food groups, or delaying eating. And mental restriction can include much judgment around food, not allowing yourself like the yum and pleasure with food, not allowing yourself the full permission to eat the foods that you genuinely enjoy. And the Minnesota Starvation Study from 1950 demonstrates the potent power of restrictive eating. The men were starved of food in an experiment and became psychologically obsessed with it. And in fact, several of the men wished to retrain as chefs after it ended, this being the extent of their food preoccupation. So if food is restricted for a human, you cannot sidestep the food fixation that takes over you. And this doesn't just happen with people who are starving and underweight. You can be undereating in any size, body shape or weight. Now, people with eating disorders usually do experience a lot of food noise. And if you have a healthy relationship with food, you're not going to be thinking about food too much, maybe about 20% of your day, and it will fluctuate depending on lifestyle and habits. But if you're spending 40 to 50% of your day obsessing about it, this is a potentially dangerous amount. With bulimia and binge eating, food preoccupation can be even higher, and clients with anorexia nervosa can experience up to 100% plus of food noise in their day as they're even dreaming about food at night. So I would argue that food noise is largely connected with disordered eating behaviours and often dietary restraint in some form. So although turning off food noise might feel beneficial, in fact you're overriding your body's natural signals around hunger and appetite. And I found that several of my clients taking the meds are often malnourished and in restriction. And it also means that when you come off the drugs, you might very likely be catapulted back into full throttle connection with your body, and you will likely experience bigger food noise than you've ever done before. So that's sort of the danger, really. It's in a way, it feels like a wonderful thing to turn off the food noise, but actually can be highly at risk of it just coming back with a vengeance if you ever have to come off the drugs, because you haven't really sort of dealt with those underlying issues. Okay, number 5, let's talk a bit more about working with drugs in the ED space. So as a therapist, I believe it's important to recognise the presence of the skinny jab and put aside personal viewpoints. We need to reduce shame and have open conversations about their use, and clients will be tempted by the drugs whatever their shape and body size. Of course they will. And when working with clients, it's helpful to balance psychoeducation and a harm reduction perspective. And fundamentally, everyone has autonomy and choice with their body. Now, if you're hugely tempted by the drugs, it's useful to explore why you want to lose weight in the first place, as bodies of all shapes and sizes can be healthy. So what are your genuine reasons? Because it might be that some health goals could be achieved in other ways, and confidence too, because we know that getting thinner is not necessarily a magic pill to self-worth and body acceptance. But it's a difficult concept to swallow in a culture that tells you otherwise. So GLP-1s are not the magic elixir or the devil either. They can certainly be a valuable tool for some. And collaborations between eating disorder services and weight loss providers would be incredibly helpful with guidelines and protocols around best practice, as the industry is largely unregulated now. Now, one of my clients with binge eating disorder had worked with me for over a year before making a personal decision to take the meds. Her decision was mainly health-driven due to mobility issues and type 2 diabetes. So working on her relationship with food prior to the meds helped her to navigate weight loss in a less extreme way. And she also has emotional regulation tools to use and had worked on self-worth, allowing a less obsessive approach in the process. GLP meds did contribute to her overall goal of improving blood sugars and improving quality of life and independence. But it's a complex issue to be approached with understanding. As a therapist, it's important to acknowledge the complexity and competing dialogues. The skinny jab, I believe, is here to stay for now, and its presence needs addressing in working with relationship with food and eating disorders. Okay, thank you so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you've got any kind of questions or comments, please do get in touch. You can either send me a DM on Instagram at the eating disorder therapist _ or an email harriet.frew@gmail.com, or if you're reading this on Substack, you can message me there. So thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoy this podcast, I would be so grateful if you'd follow, rate and review, as it helps it reach so many more listeners. And if you'd like written articles of this podcast every week, twice weekly, for free to your inbox, please go to the link in the show notes and you can subscribe to my Substack for free. Thank you so much. And I look forward to sharing another podcast episode with you very soon.